Hey everyone, very excited to be joined with Jason from Outbound AI. If you guys don't already know Outbound AI, they are the leading outbound calling IQ and analytics platform. And today we're going to be talking about how voice AI fits into the mix of things. But I want to turn it over to you, Jason, to give a little introduction about your guys' company, what you do there, and
Sure.
take it from that.
Hey everybody. So again, as Will said, my name is Jason Shatzkamer. I was a co-founder and am the CEO at Outbound IQ. We do work with about 850 outbound callers in the space across all the different verticals with the goal of trying to help them be better at what they do and therefore increase contact rates, conversion rates, and success rates.
Very cool. So, Jason, I know that a lot of what we wanted to talk about today was just to have a real candid conversation about, what you're seeing around AI conversations in especially outbound use cases and where the opportunities that you see today are. So, what do you think that where are you seeing in the marketplace? What are your thoughts on AI calling or AI calling in general?
All right. So there was a period of time where I was very anti AI agents at all, right? And that has changed. And it's changed partially because the technology has changed, and it's changed partially because my perspective on outbound calling has changed. And I will tell you that where I am right now with AI voice is not where I think a lot of people are currently in the space, which is how do I use it to replace a human agent workforce, is where I see a lot of people's heads at right now. And whereas I understand the frustrations and the challenges that people are trying to solve by doing so, to me, I look at it differently. I look at the outbound calling space, and my perception is there are certain things right now that your agents are doing successfully. Maybe not perfectly, but successfully. And then there's a whole universe of things that your agents aren't doing today. Where I like to look at the voice in AI is on all of the areas, first and foremost, where my agents aren't today. I want to fill in those voids because right now the consumer has nothing. At 1 p.m., they've got your team to talk to. At 1 a.m., they have nothing. If they call you in English, they have your team to talk to. If they call you in Spanish, maybe they don't.
Yeah.
If you get 3 phone calls onto your floor at once from a TV commercial, they can talk to your team. But if you get 5 phone calls at once from your TV commercial, 2 of them get nothing. So there's a lot of areas in contact center right now where there's nothing. And in my mind, that is the perfect start to your AI journey. Because instead of trying to replace what's already there, is filling in all the areas where you're completely missing.
Yeah.
To me, that's the best use of AI right now is availability and just being there for when the consumer is ready.
Yeah, exactly. And it's probably one of the hardest parts for a lot of these contact centers and call centers is like, we see this all the time in Phonely as well, where you you can't predict the unpredictable. You can't predict if 5 people are going to call you at the same time. You can't predict if people are going to call you at 1 a.m. And it doesn't make sense to staff for that because then you're just like essentially throwing money out the door. And so what you see is what we see a lot of businesses and organizations starting with, which is just like, hey, let's plug in a voice AI system to handle the areas in which it's a really high pain point or very expensive to have a human like kind of in the loop there. One of the things I want to dive in with you a little bit really quick as well is like you guys do a lot, 850 customers, a ton of customers. These are big customers as well. How many calls would you say that you see on a monthly basis like run through your platform?
I'll give you the exact number if you give me one
Yeah.
second. Let's get this right now. So we can extrapolate that right now, this month so far, I'll just give you year to date. It's a pretty good number. This year so far, and mid-April, we have clocked just under oh, excuse me, 1,083,000. Nope, 1,083,200,349. So
That is crazy.
over a billion dials, and that is separated across pretty much every vertical you can think of. Now, what's interesting, and I'll get, like, we've got the insurance divisions that all have their own thing going on. We've got legal and attorneys. We've got healthcare and medical. We've got mortgage. We've got home improvement and home services. We've got BPOs, marketing and advertising companies, colleges and universities, apps, travel companies, hospitality, hotels, debt collections, debt repair. I mean, energy, real estate, you name it. 100% of these companies are doing human to human outreach. And intentionally or not, they are all reaching out to the same people. So, just remember that's the universe that's going on out there, where it may not even be you that is clogging the phone lines. It may be something very different from you that is, you don't get to see that kind of stuff unless you're sitting in a high perch like we are. We get to kind of see those moving parts that today you're trying to reach Will, but it just so happens that today 12 other people are also trying to reach Will for reasons totally unrelated.
Right.
But because of that little hotspot, you can't reach Will today.
Right.
There's too much traffic, right? So it's fun kind of watching all of these things play out. We have a lot of dials coming through our system, and we track them 24/7. So we see it. We see that when these companies are making outbound, American Red Cross places dials all the way up through 8 p.m. 7:59 p.m. their last dials go out every day. Over the course of those last few hours, they have placed a bunch of outbound calls and, in my mindset, at least planted a whole bunch of seeds. Then at 8 o'clock, their agents log out and leave. And all of the remnant callbacks from all those outbound dials for the next hour start coming in as the ashes fade out. And we watch 100% of those callbacks go nowhere. Like, when I see that, I start jumping up and down and I start screaming things like Phonely.
Yeah.
Like, nothing is the worst possible answer you can give.
Right. And it's because, people, they work so hard on these dials. You work so hard to get the customer on the phone. And you call and you try and you spend money and you buy lists and you do all this stuff. And then 8 o'clock comes around, people log out, and you forget that customer was like ready at the time.
Ready.
Weren't available.
Yep. And we see it like clockwork. For the hour after everybody leaves, all those outbound calls generate fruit, and there's nothing there to eat it. And then in the following morning, and this is where it sucks to be a caller, because there's no winning here. But if their agents get in at 9, the consumers will start calling at 8:30. If they shift their schedule so that all the agents come in at 8, the consumers will start calling at 7:30. There's no winning that battle. No matter what, they're going to beat you to the punch. But again, you don't have to outsmart them. You have to have an answer.
Yeah.
Phonely. Like, and again, I say Phonely because you're here with me, but it's really just something. They need to have something. They need to meet their consumers where they are. And those overnight hours are key, especially in certain demographics, like in the legal space where they're doing social media addiction. Right? A lot of these folks are filling out lead forms or expressing a call for help 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
By the time your people get in at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, you can't get them on the phone anymore.
Yeah.
There was a moment. There was a moment where they wanted help. There was a moment where they felt that you were the answer and you weren't there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. Not anymore. Not with today's technology.
Right. I mean, I definitely have been a few like 3 a.m. moments where I've been like, I need to go to bed right now. So I completely understand what you're saying there. With regards to where do you see? So you're doing a billion calls in 4 months, which is crazy. Over a billion calls running through your platform. The biggest thing you're jumping up and down upon is that there's all these missed opportunities that are not getting capitalized on. What do you see in voice AI from a like what does that look like? Does it look like booking appointments? Does it look like, just
sure,
getting information? Like what would be the perfect situation?
booking appointments. Seeing as how LeadsCon is next week, and seeing as how LeadsCon has pretty much been taken over by the home improvement sector, why don't we talk about the home improvement sector as an example? What's good for voice AI? So I am not a fan of voice AI as the first swing at lead follow-up or appointment setting. Not a fan of it, right? Not a fan of it. I believe that a human agent will beat an AI agent at that outbound call and the human connection every day of the week. Every day of the week.
Yeah.
But that's not all a home improvement company does. They've got appointments that are kept and confirmations that have to take place. Right now, they're putting human resources on the confirmations. They do not need to do that. And it's maybe more trouble than it's worth for the consumer on the other end. Leveraging AI, whether it be in the form of voice or whether it be in the form of SMS, are certainly the way to go when it comes to stuff like that. You can always follow up with a human on the hard to reach ones or on the high value ones or whatever it is you assume. There's appointment missed. There's various other components, appointment changes. We've got surveys. We've got all of these other things that I think are ideal for AI implementations, including the inbounds, the overflow, and the after hours. For the most part, what we ask of our AI agents as we try to implement them for our customers are the basic blocking and tackling. Don't let the consumer land on the floor. Give them a safe landing wherever they come in, whether it be taking a message, scheduling a callback at the most base level. Greet them with a conversation and an intelligent answer to nothingness. As you start getting deeper into that, you can start doing things like self-setting appointments and other stuff like that right through the phone channel, right through the AI agent. And there are certain customers that will prefer that, or at the very least, go through that. And that's the first time in contact center that we find ourselves with the ability to make money or to move things forward when the agents aren't in their seats, which is a whole new universe for contact centers who historically, if there were no agents in the seats, nothing was happening. So now we've introduced this new dimension into what we're able to do. But my whole thing that I've been talking about with our customers, when they say to me, should we be doing this via AI or should we be doing this via human, is I say, ask your consumer. Like when somebody calls into you, if you said to them, would you like to speak to our human agent or would you like to speak to our AI agent? Let them choose. So it's not, should I have one or the other? It's, you should have both. And let the consumer tell you what they prefer. And that's your job, is to have both. And not to force the consumer into an area that they don't want to be. So, again, all of these different tools and technologies, so many of them are ends and not ors. And by the decisions that your consumers are making, you can learn a lot. about whether they're preferring your human experience or whether they're preferring your AI experience. A lot of the younger audience will shy away from the human experience. A lot of the younger audience prefer talking to the AI. So, you know, for me, the more open doors into my appointment calendar, the more open doors into my company, the more entry points that we make available. Should I be calling from toll free or local? Yes, both. Should I be calling from branded or unbranded? Yes, both. Should I be leaving messages or not leaving messages? Yes, both. Should I be doing voice or SMS? Both. The or question is almost always the wrong question.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think it's probably like, if we extrapolate that one step further, it's like, should I be doing AI or humans? It's like, no, you should be doing both. And
Correct.
I think it goes both ways on, you focus a lot on outbound calling, but probably on inbound calling as well. And so what we work a lot at Phonely is the inbound lead qualification period, because I think what we do differently than all of our other competitors in the market, which there are a lot of, and there's a lot of vendors to choose from, is we really think of the phone as a funnel. And that's what people in the outbound space really understand, is it's like you do a number of dials, you have a few people that get on the phone, you have a few people that say, go fuck yourself, and they hang up, and then you have a few other people that are like, okay, yeah, this is interesting, and then you have a few of those that convert. And what we do is rather than saying like outbound side, there's a lot of regulations around that, right? And so rather than saying we're just going to spam call everybody and see what fits, when you have an inbound side, when you have a lead that's coming in, they're raising their hand, right? They're already saying, hey, I do want to talk to you because I'm calling in. That still is a whole funnel, right? And that funnel is, can we keep the customer engaged? Can we answer their questions appropriately? Can we sound like a human with empathy and with compassion? And then can we actually take the action? And when it comes out, it's like, in contact centers and call centers, the entire experience for years and years has been like, how do we train our humans to get better? And right now, what we don't see on the market is any other company that's saying, how do we train our voice AI agent to get it better every single time? And so when you're calling in that second time, you as a business want to know, how do I make it better?
And the more you can know about context and the more flexible you can be with that context on that inbound call, there's a luxury on inbound. Like on outbound, like the moment that call connects, you better be talking. The minute you introduce a lag or a delay, whether it be a human agent or an AI agent, that outbound call falls down. But on the inbound side, you have a little bit of ringing and you have a little bit of potential greeting to think about stuff in your technology. And you have the ability to be very creative. If you can identify when somebody is calling in because of an installation problem versus that the AI agent that answers should be empathetic, should be calming, should be diffusing what is a potential situation. Yeah. Whereas when somebody's calling in for an appointment, there should be an excitement, a friendliness that is totally inappropriate for an installation problem where the customer's already angry, right? There's so much that you know about context on the way in to be able to get it right. It's a game changer for national home improvement companies. There is something to be said for fielding an Arkansas consumer with an Arkansas vibe. Yep. The New York vibe doesn't work.
Right.
And this is where I find the most fun in what it is that you do, is the ability to be anyone and to be correct, which we've never had before.
Yeah.
In the calling space.
Yeah. And that's I think exciting. Like I say this all the time where I'm like, I feel like we're at e-commerce in the 90s, where it's like just figured out that you could put books on the internet, but nobody's realized that you can optimize for conversion on checkout, right? And so like the Shopify of voice AI is what we think of ourselves as, because it's like there's so many nuances that we can create better conversations for customers because they're happy, right? If the customer gets what they want, it's not like you're tricking them. It's like they had a good experience. Like that's awesome. And then they were served immediately when they wanted to. 2 a.m., 2 a.m., you want to get off social media, you call in the company, immediately you're able to talk to an AI agent that has compassion and is able to book you in to an appointment to speak with a licensed professional that will get you the right coaching that you need. I mean, that's a great world to live in.
It is. And when that's actually, if you want to know, the thing that fundamentally flipped my perspective on the AI agents was those after hour calls. And it was from a company called Hippocratic AI. The founder is a friend of mine, and they do AI based phone channel nursing, AI nursing. Now, at first, you're like, well, that's terrible. You don't want AI nursing. You want real nursing. And ideally, you would have it. But at 2 a.m., it's hard to get on the phone with your doctor.
Yeah.
When you're feeling a heart murmur or something weird, it's hard to get on the phone with your actual nurse who knows your medical records. And so you find yourself with an answering service. And I'm going to tell you that an AI that has access to your history, that has access to which are real warning signs and which aren't, that could dispatch an ambulance at 2 in the morning instead of waiting for the nurse to be available at 8 a.m. during which time anything terrible could happen. So at 2 in the morning, what do people do when they're feeling not quite right? They're stuck. Or what if they're feeling not quite right and they only speak Czech?
Yeah.
Now what? Their options fall apart even more. What if they're in Somalia
Yeah.
when that happens? Like, what do they do? So for all of this, the answer previously was we have nothing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we have something, and that something is way better than the nothing. That is it ideal? Wouldn't it be great if they could get in touch with the best Czech speaking doctor on earth at 2 in the morning? Of course it would be great, but they can't.
Yeah.
And so that's where, to me, it fundamentally changed everything because I'm like, availability.
Yeah.
What a game changer. And maybe a Windows appointment is not the mission critical thing that it necessarily solves, but it's equally applicable to
Yeah.
your business and your customer service experience. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really blew me away when I was talking to him, what they found was that some of their calls would go on for like 4 hours. And when they would listen to the calls, they would find that this elderly gentleman who called in at 2 a.m. and only spoke Czech, this is the first time this person's had a conversation with anyone in Czech in a month. And they sit there and they talk. And I remember talking to my friend and saying, well, obviously that's very expensive. Are you going to implement guardrails for that? And they said they met internally and they decided no. They decided that if the person wants to talk, they would let them. And I thought that was really kind. It was like the best and worst thing that I've heard simultaneously, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's remarkable. It's amazing all the different roles that this technology is playing. And I believe that there's room in what we do for all of it and the humans. And again, I think the or question is where companies miss more often than not. It is not an or. It is a careful balance of an end.
Yeah. Yeah. And so speaking of so most people out here have just used humans. They've never used an AI system. Maybe they've used an IVR system before, but that's a completely different ballgame. How do you think that they should view adopting a voice AI agent?
So a lot of it is going to be knowledge gathering. A lot of it that I found is going to be a careful understanding and evaluation of what do we really do here and what do we really need this thing to do, this AI agent. And what's funny is you mentioned the folks that these folks usually already have human agents. And I'm going to tell you that I watch them putting more investment and scrutiny and evaluation on these processes in order to train the AI agent. than they ever put into the same exact processes that we're running with the humans. And it's like, if you just took that effort, that intensity, and applied it back here, you could have, boy, what you could have done. So I think, again, I think it's really fundamentally a careful evaluation of what it is that you're doing and a real understanding of what matters to your consumers. I think that's ultimately it, right? They should, is having that in hand. Signing up for a dialer doesn't get you a successful contact center, and signing up for an AI with an AI company doesn't get you a successful AI initiative. It's you. It's always you.
Yeah. Truer words have never been spoken, I think. We see
Yeah.
this all the time where I think there's a meme out there where it's like, what do you want? And it's AI. When do you want it? Right now. And it's like, what do you want it to do? And like, we don't know,
Right.
And I think that we see so many customers that kind of come to us and they're like, all right, we've checked the AI box, but what we see is the real customers that are getting real results. And what does that mean? Like, we had one customer that we made $10 million this year in new insurance policy sales that have ran through our voice AI agent, right? This year, it's
That's
crazy.
amazing.
Like, the amount of scale that you can get on this, but it takes investment. Like they used our platform, they built the agent out, they understood their scripts, they came into it, they A/B tested things. They figured out what was the most optimal kind of configuration. And it's not something that customers always have to do. We obviously offer this as well, but there is that part of like, hey, if it takes you 6 months, let's say, worst case scenario, which shouldn't, but let's say it takes you 6 months to get a voice AI system implemented and onboarding and optimizing, you can press the AI button. And it's really hard to press the human button. But the AI button is a really easy one to be like, all right, I'm just going to send more calls. It's working. It's aligned to my metrics. I got myself organized. I got things put together. And
it is. And we see some similar things. They're like, well, now I have my AI, so my scale is endless. And so I could make so many more calls. And I'm like, hold on, like, wrong use of the technology.
Yeah.
Wrong, like, yes, you can scale, but is scale really what you need? And so this is ultimately where I say, like, the better you are at that which you do, the more results it will yield. The more work you put in, and the more thought you put in, and the more effort you put in, the more results you will get. And
Yeah.
I don't care if that's with your humans or with your AI or with your CRM or with your dialer or with your marketing or with your training.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. The companies that put in the most get the most out. That's almost a universal philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's 100% true. The other thing I think we should address is AI. There's a lot of fear in the market from a lot of people that don't understand AI. And then there's people like us who do understand AI. So what are your thoughts about how the day-to-day person or people that don't have very much familiarity should be thinking about AI from a fear perspective?
To be honest, I share the fear, but for me in the technical space, it's more excitement to see how these things unfold. Maybe that's a little anarchistic in a way, but I'm kind of looking forward to a lot of these things appearing. So, we talk all about correctness in AI, getting it to self-set appointments, getting it to have good conversations, getting it to ignore the background noise, getting it to recognize context, to understand shifts in tone, to do all of these things, right? And all these things are right. And if we get a perfect down the strike zone process and call, boy, is it amazing when the AI keeps pace and does exactly what it's supposed to do right through that perfect strike zone of a call. But
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this out there, and this is where the fear comes in, that there's a huge amount of unknowns in this space. And here's what we don't know. What happens when somebody is calling not to schedule an appointment, but specifically to hack your AI?
Yeah.
What happens when it's not them calling, but it's their AI calling your AI? What are the guardrails? How deep into your systems can it reach? Because What we don't know are all of the things that literally we don't know.
Yeah.
I remember watching Taco Bell. They rolled out AI beta at their drive-thru. And I remember watching a TikTok video a couple of days after by some 14-year-old kid hanging out the back of a car window that pulls up to the Taco Bell drive-thru and just yells at it. The AI agent comes on and says, "How can I help you?" And the kid yells out, 40,000 water cups. And immediately there's silence, silence, silence. And then it's like connecting to a human agent now. And one 14-year-old yelling an obvious landmine out of a back window broke all these months and years of AI development right away, kicked down to a human agent. And it's like, that's just one teeny tiny little innocent example of all the ways somebody who's determined to screw your system
Yep.
might figure out how to do so if you're not careful. And again, if there were specific things that we could tell you to look for, I would be screaming them from the rafters. But this is the weird part of where we are with AI. We don't know.
I think my 2 cents on that is a little bit of, as somebody who's spent 3 years building and designing these like architectures from the ground up, is it comes in picking a good software and a good platform that has the right controls in place. And so one from the technical side, what thing that we do at Phonely is, let's say for example, in the worst case scenario, maybe you have your bank account information or accessing your account, right?
Yeah.
And so if you have that set up with an AI system and if you're not isolating the different segments, like the different rules, and you let somebody get direct access to that without going through the proper authentication steps, that's a huge problem. And so if you're picking, like, as you're picking and evaluating a voice AI vendor, you need to make sure that isolation exists. And what does that mean? Well, the way that we do it is we have different prompts that are isolated from each other. So it's like, first step is let's gather the customer's information, their account number, their password, whatever information you need to gather. And then only if we gather all that information, we make an API request to your system, that information returns a success, and then it's blocked by the code. Then it can go to the next one. And in that way, in that type of situation, it's like you can't get through there without here. But what we see is a lot of people, they're just like putting it in a prompt and they're like, call this tool whenever, it's called call this tool whenever you need to. And that's where the problems happen. And so you need to have some layer of isolation where you can remove that and say, this needs to be gated logic before it even passes forward.
And that's the thing, right? So you bring up a very good point here. And I say, how many of my customers know to even ask that question?
Right.
Of an AI provider? Does it even cross their mind? And should it? And what happens if it doesn't? What happens if they pick the wrong provider? What happens if that hole does remain open?
Yeah.
Right? These are the unknowns that are so scary because, I mean, we heard about it in the early days with companies like, I think it was Comcast, that was using AI customer service agents. And they had a promotion where certain customers might be eligible for certain things, but the AI was a natural language AI in their customer service, and it on some of the calls said are eligible. And I believe a court held that because the AI agent said that, that the customer that they owed the customer, that they held them to it. Like, man, you have to be careful.
Yeah.
Man, you have to be careful.
Yeah.
And that's level of effort, and it's due diligence, and it's investigation. It's challenging.
Yeah.
For sure, but it's new ground.
Yeah. One thing that we talk about a lot because I'm in the far bubble of the bubbles, like the very tip. But one of the things that we do when we're evaluating voice AI is evals. And so what are evals? They're basically humans are evals in the olden days, right? We QA calls, right? We're evaluating other people's performance. But on the AI perspective, we have, large language models and different frameworks and stuff that we process in the back end. So we're evaluating like, hey, did it say the wrong thing? Did it say the right thing? And a really good provider is going to be able to say, well, okay, well, we know we can take your existing calls that you've already had, and we can run them through our AI system and make sure that we're getting the same response out. And then that way we get reps. right? It's like if you were going to train a call
Yes.
center, how would you do it? You would, hey, call this person up, let's practice. Hey, call this person up, let's practice. Let's see how, let's feedback, let's improve. And we did, and like really good providers, they have some way of building those evals, those test sets that you can actually make the AI better like you would make a human.
Now, here's what I like about everything that you're saying right now. If we're going to come full circle to everything we've been talking about today, I'm going to say that everything that you're describing right there is work. Work towards being better. And the universal theme here is that without that, there is absolutely positively no salvation. Not in the world of human contact center, not in the world of AI contact center, not in any universe that I know of. Do you win the races on Sunday with no effort and full automation? Cruise control has no place on the racetrack.
Yep. 100%.
You know? So
100%.
all of this work pays dividends, but you must do the work.
Yep.
No matter what.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's like, we saw this, right? We saw this like every transition that there ever was. Companies that did the work to adopt the internet in the early days, they did pretty well. Companies that embraced the digital, turning phone into a camera, they did well. Companies that stayed behind, they didn't do well. There's like, it's all a part of like those that are willing to embrace, those that are willing to do the work to like figure it out. It pays dividends, and I don't think that AI is any different.
And it's not ends and it's not ors, right? And that's the other thing too. I mean,
yeah,
like if you have the ability to have a strong website, that doesn't mean you don't have a strong mobile app. If you have a strong mobile app, that doesn't mean you don't have a chat. If you have a strong voice, that doesn't mean you don't have a text. If you have a strong text, it doesn't mean you don't have a voice. Like at the end of the day, the notion of ors is also problematic. If you want to be the number one team every single race day, you must be better than everyone else at all of these things. Because if you're not trying to be it, someone else is trying to be it, and they will win.
Exactly. It all comes effort. Well, I know we're getting close to time. I wanted you to give a chance to leave the audience with maybe one thing that you think that they should think about, like one takeaway message from what we talked about today, and then one like call to action about a little bit more about what you guys do. So those are the two things I'll ask.
Sure.
Yeah.
Number one, obviously, if you are evaluating AI or any kind of AI, I would recommend a discussion right out of the gate with Will and with Phonely. I'm going to tell you that matter-of-factly. I've watched Will and Phonely evolve. They started right around the same time as we started outboundIQ. I think Will was one of my first phone calls and the first people that I met, and it's been amazing watching, Will, what you've been able to do with the business, and I commend you for it. And that's why we're doing this together. The other thing I'll say is, again, back to the opening remark, stop worrying so much about AI as a whole. Start worrying more about your business. Start to understand where the holes are in your business, and then ask yourself the question, can my AI help fill those holes? Stop looking first at the technology and then at where to put it in your business, and start looking at the holes in your business and figure out how the technology can help. That's my advice. And it's just a perspective thing, but I think it's a big difference in perspective and a lot less confusing when you approach it that way.
Yeah, I love the way that you just said that. I feel like that's very true. And then a plug for Outbound.
outboundIQ?
outboundIQ.
Yeah, I mean, give us a call. Again, outside of podcasts and things like this is our favorite thing in the world to do. If our software isn't a right fit for you, if we're not a business opportunity, we don't care. Give us a call. We're a great sounding board. We would be happy to talk through any of this with you and answer any additional questions. And if we can help you with our software, of course, we'd love to. That's it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much for hopping on. I do want to leave with one more thing that we'll offer is any Outbound A&I customer, we are giving them the first 30 days free on Phonely, unlimited call answering, whatever you want to do on that for the first 30 days. We'll answer the call for your inbound conversations as they're coming back in, so you're not missing them on hold, and show you what we can do for the team. Obviously, this is going to be limited on capacity, but we want to make sure that it's out there. And for all of our customers, anyone else evaluating a space, Jason and his team is absolutely the best at what they do.
This is what I love, and I'm gonna reciprocal it, because honestly, what Will just did is express confidence in his platform. That's what he did, and I'm gonna do the same thing. Anybody using Phonely who wants to see what Outbound IQ or Outbound AI can do for their human or AI outbound initiative, we'll also give you a free month.
There you go.
Give you a free 2 months. Come say hi.
Awesome. Well, very excited. Thanks so much for hopping on the call. It was a really, really great conversation. Look forward to many more and to seeing you at LeadsCon in a couple days.
See you next week.